Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. What do we got today, Rick?
We're going to be ranking some second-round running backs.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's poppin'? How we doing, Fantasy Champs? My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. I got a nice fantasy football trophy. We got one more draft show. Pre-season. What do we call our content in the off season? Regular
season. This would be preseason content, but
this would be preseason content. We got one more draft related episode. Actually, if you include this one too. But we have a mock draft Tuesday, and then we got our regular season content coming at you. For me, week 1 starts Monday.
Yeah, pretty much.
So if you want to earn yourself one of these, buy our draft guide.
And listen to us.
Talk about everything. We got a lot to get to in this episode. We're going to talk specifically about the second round and the running backs in the second round. Normally, I would say the third round is where you snag your running back, because I've been following for the last 3 or 4 years. I've been following the same strat of going with so a running back in the third round and a wide receiver in the second. But, in this particular year, we have some weird things happening. Wide receivers are falling way down the board. Running backs are getting drafted far too often. So the strategy of choice for me this year has been drafting running backs. Yeah. So we're going to give you our favorite second round running backs in this show. Or we're going to rank the second round running backs for you so you know who to take in the second round.
There's a lot of good running backs in the second round.
Yeah.
So.
Hopefully they all work out.
Hopefully. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen, but
before we jump into that, check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter at the FFChamps, on Instagram at the Fantasy Champions. You can check us out on TikTok now. TikTok, what's the handle for TikTok again?
Fantasy Champions.
Oh, there you go. Same as Instagram. So just go over to TikTok, follow, do all that stuff. You can go to facebook.com/The Fantasy Champions. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, be sure to subscribe. Subscribe will help us the most. Leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you're listening on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and then like and comment down below. Can you tell them about the draft guide, Rick?
Yeah. Guys, you don't have much time left, so you might want to purchase it. It's $25.
One of those
We got full rankings. We got breakouts, busts, player draft values, player breakdowns, and so much more. So make sure you tell your friends about it. You got like a few days left, really.
Yeah. This weekend is going to be the weekend. A quick word from our sponsor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. It's free. And there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone. You can pick up your phone and record a friggin' podcast, which is crazy. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or any other podcasting platform. You can also make money with your podcast because they have a no minimum listenership to start putting ads on your content. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So be sure to download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I say we get started with this ranking of the second round running backs.
All right, let's do it.
Should I go from top to bottom or bottom to top?
Good question. I think we should do bottom to top.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll let people boil. So we'll start off with number 6. And he's one of our busts, but more recently, I feel like this man's has been falling so far down boards that it's almost worth drafting him now.
Yeah,
is he even a bust anymore? That's the real question.
Depends where he goes in the draft.
I think it's funny. One of the TikToks that Rick put out the other day, as you mentioned, we have a TikTok now. I'll name drop it twice. That Rick put out the other day, ranking our running backs, and people seemed very triggered that we did not have Aaron Jones in the top 7. So what's funny is that the industry seems to have a consensus opinion that he's not a top 10 running back or not a top 8 running back. But everyone else seems to think that Aaron Jones is a top 5 running back. So for the sake of this argument, where you're drafting him is not bad. But he comes in at number 6 on our rankings of second round running backs. I believe he's a back end of the second round pick. His ADP, I'll pull it up. His ADP being 17 on average, according to Fantasy Pros. So, I mean, we've talked about Aaron Jones a million times and why we think he's going to be a bust. I mean, obviously, I think for him, the efficiency that he's shown over the course of his career has been nothing short of awesome. One fantasy point per opportunity. You know how I love my fantasy points per opportunity.
Sure.
And so he had 1 fantasy point per opportunity. For me, I think that is the very topic that it starts for Aaron Jones is opportunity. And I think that in that offense, it's hard to watch because there are games where he rushes it 20 times and has 5 catches. And then there are games where he gets 7 touches total. And it's like, if you get 7 touches total in a game, you get 1 fantasy point per opportunity. Yeah, you get 7 fantasy points, but in a half PPR and PPR league, that's disgusting. So I think for me, Aaron Jones is just going to be an inconsistent guy who gets you not a lot of opportunity. And we've talked about the touchdown regression in the past, but I think for me, it's like, I don't think he's going to lose that touchdown, or red zone rushing share that he had last year. He'll probably get the same amount, but it's just a matter of, there's a lot of variables that go into Aaron Jones not scoring 19 touchdowns again. And so if he gets 10 touchdowns, 11 touchdowns, it's still good, but it's a loss of close to 60 fantasy points to his total last year. So that drops him in the bucket in terms of where he lands. I think he ends up as a RB12, RB13, which if you're drafting him off the board, is that all the power to you. Not a bad play. But if you're drafting him as a top 10 running back and he ends up being RB 15, 16, 17, then you're losing your league.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Aaron Jones multiple times on the show. I think of the list of second round running backs that we have, I think we both very clearly agree that he was at the bottom of it. Not that he's...
It was easy. We just put him in first and then did everyone else.
Pretty much, yeah. Not that he's bad. His ability in the receiving game, especially with the lack of weapons in Green Bay, is going to make him a good player. He's always been efficient. He's still going to be the RB1 on the team, even with A.J. Dillon and Williams still there. He's still going to lead the team in carries and yards and touchdowns as well. The problem and the concerns that we have, though, is, again, like you said, it's just the 19 touchdowns from last season. That is not going to happen again. Where people are drafting him is just a little too high for where he's going to most likely finish.
Right.
Not saying he's bad. He's going to be good.
He's not a trash can.
Right. But he's just you're drafting Aaron Jones at his ceiling pretty much. Unless, of course, he can get the 19 touchdowns again, which, again, is very unlikely.
Right.
And one thing that concerns me, I think more than others, too, is the A.J. Dillon, the praise that he's gotten from Matt LaFleur and stuff. Not necessarily that he's going to take any carries away from Aaron Jones, but he might take the goal line carries, which Aaron Jones was great at last year. I don't know how many
he takes all
touchdowns he had. No, I don't think he takes all of them, but he's going to take enough where you're going to see a dent in Aaron Jones's total fantasy points. And I think that's a legitimate concern.
Yeah, I think the offense, in general, last year was relatively efficient. And as Rodgers gets older, I'm not saying the Packers aren't going to be efficient offensively because they've always been, but as he gets older, they've increasingly gotten more inefficient, in terms of production, offensively. So I think that also will probably hurt Aaron Jones, but I hate to say blanket regression because you have to have reasons behind the regression. You can't just say, he's not going to score 19 touchdowns because he can't do it.
Well, so here's what I'll say about that. A.J. Dillon, for one, 1 touchdowns. The offense is not going to be as good as it was last year with the loss of who's there. Well, Devin Funchess wasn't there last year, but they lost Jimmy Graham.
Yeah.
The offensive line is getting older as well. Aaron Rodgers is getting older as well. I personally, I don't know about you, but I don't think the offense is going to be as good this year as it was last year.
Yeah.
So there's two reasons right there. And then Aaron Jones, the 19 touchdowns is very hard to do for any player. Like, how many players in the league get 19?
Yeah.
Around 19 touchdowns a year.
Right.
It's
Gurley did it like twice.
Right.
But he had an absurd amount of opportunity.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing, is that sometimes,
and he was on one like the 5 best.
Yeah. Some of the biggest like analytics that I like to look at for running backs is obviously red zone percentage and how much they touch the ball in the red zone, because touchdowns are king in fantasy football in any format. Which is why he was so efficient last year, Aaron Jones, with the 19 touchdowns. But I also like to look at snap percentage and see how much that person's on the field. You know, we faded Mark Andrews, tight end from the Baltimore Ravens, this year because his snap percentage was 52%, and he just can't keep up with that amount of production at such a small snap percentage. For Aaron Jones, it's that kind of same situation where they go RBBC. They like A.J. Dillon. They like Jamal Williams. They want to get all of these guys the ball. And it's like if they're like, it's hard, no matter how much you run the football, to get 3 running backs involved and have all 3 have success. I mean, the only running back tandem that I can think of in the last 10 years that was super successful and 2 guys from that offense finished in the top 6 at running back was Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara, and Alvin Kamara's rookie year. And it's like, that does not happen very often where 2 guys finish high. I'm not saying that that's going to happen for Green Bay, but I feel like A.J. Dillon could come in and start pulling some reps away from Aaron Jones. And that's more specifically why he's if you're in the second round, if he's all you got, and you want to take a running back,
sure.
take him.
End of the second round, yeah.
Yeah, but if he, I mean, obviously we think he's going to be a bust, but if he's late enough in that second round or early third, I would just take him at that point.
There's a big gap to me between the second round running backs and the third round running backs as well. So,
right.
If Aaron Jones is there at the end of the second round, he's definitely solid.
So he's just he's at like, if I'm in the second round, say I'm picking early in the second round, he's the last guy I want.
Right. You have your choice of running backs.
So let's talk about the number 5 guy, Austin Eckler. I feel like we, as a program, have not talked too much about Austin Eckler this year. With the exception of the ranking shows, we've spent a majority of our time talking about Clyde, Mixon, Jacobs, Miles Sanders. And Austin Eckler just was non-existent for some reason. But right before your drafts this weekend, we are going to tell you about Austin freaking Eckler, I guess.
Better late than never. I mean, we have talked about him before on the show.
Yes.
Not as much as the other guys.
So, I mean, obviously, we saw Eckler last year without Melvin Gordon. It was crazy. It was insane. What did Melvin miss the first 4 games of the season?
4 games of the year. Eckler was the RB2.
Oh, see, you already got it. I was going to look it up. You already got it.
He's the RB2 in the 4 games that Melvin Gordon missed last year. He was just 4 points behind McCaffrey for being the RB1.
Yeah.
And he averaged close to 24 fantasy points a game.
Wow.
So he was very, very good.
So, I mean, there's obviously some variables as to why that happens. Eckler is known as a pass-catching running back. He had 108 targets last year for 92 catches. He catches 85% of his passes, so the more passes you freaking throw to him, that's insane. The fact that he had 108 targets and caught 92 of them. He had 900 receiving yards and 8 receiving touchdowns. I just want to pace out the 4 games that he started early in the season before Melvin Gordon came in. If you pace that out, he had 224 rushing attempts for 880 yards. That's disgusting. 3.93 yards a carry is like David Montgomery. That's not very good. And I think a lot of people don't really notice that about Austin Eckler. I think that we look past that, cover our eyes and go, oh my God, he's so good at receiving. And it's like, he's fantastic. He's one of the best receiving running backs in the game. But I think for me, when you look at, like, literally, he had 100 targets, 96 receptions. This is what he's pacing out for after the first 4 games. 1,000 yards receiving and 12 receiving touchdowns.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of efficiency, he might get a little bit better in yards per average, the yards per average.
Right. Like he averaged for the whole year, it was 4.2.
Yeah. If he did that for the whole season on 220 carries, he gets around 1,000 rushing yards.
Right.
So that's, 2,000 all-purpose yards, and this pacing was 24 touchdowns, which isn't going to happen, but
Ridiculous,
that's girly RB1 2018 numbers.
Anybody gets 20 plus touchdowns is going to
be a top 3, automatically a top 3.
RB, at least
please,
RB2.
for the love of God, Miles Sanders. But no, I am concerned about, he's not a very, and so many people are going to be pissed off that I say this, but he's not a very good running back.
No, you're right. I mean, even if people are pissed off, like compared to the other guys going in his range, he's not.
I feel like the guys like Josh Kelly, the guy they just drafted, Justin Jackson, even if they choose to go out and sign Leonard Fournette or Devonta Freeman or somebody, eventually is going to come into this offense and play the Melvin Gordon role. And Austin Eckler what you may end up with is Austin Eckler playing the same role that he played with Melvin Gordon, which is not a bad role. Because when you look at the second half of the season after Melvin Gordon came back and he kind of took over that starting role again, you pace his numbers out in the receiving category, and he still gets 111 targets, 91 receptions, 964 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He gets 100 to 120 rushes for 500 yards. He's already got 1,500 all-purpose yards and about 7 to 10 touchdowns, and he's a high-end RB2. So that's a really good running back for you to grab. And I think what excites people is that if they don't give the ball to Justin Jackson or Josh Kelly a lot, and they do give it to Austin Eckler, and he does rush it effectively, like that 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, maybe 4.5 yards per carry, then he could be a lock to be a top 3 running back.
Yeah, Eckler has a lot of upside this year for sure. And I know you wouldn't because he's your boy, but I was even thinking of putting him one spot higher on this list. Because I do love his upside. He does have some legitimate concerns, though, and I think rushing the football is one of them. But he's a very good player, very great receiver. And again, RB3 last year in his first 4 weeks.
The Patriots just cut Mohamed Sanu. I'm going to say that what a waste of a second-round pick, first of all. And I'm going to say that they're cutting him for a specific purpose.
Well, there was rumors.
Cut downs are happening already.
That was
what is it, Thursday?
Possibility. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's a little bit surprising.
I once I saw that it was possible, I was not surprised by the breaking news.
Do you think this is to clear some cap space? Well, it's not. We don't need to clear cap space. He's got $26 million.
I think it's just the fact that
he's not very good.
Yeah. I mean,
anyway, not that this has anything to do with what you're talking about. I just wanted to note that Mohamed Sanu has been cut.
Get the Gunner shares up and N'Keal Harry.
Gunner. Oh, yeah. I guess that means that who's the other guy? Jacoby Myers made the team.
Yeah,
I guess. Anyway, so what were you saying about Eckler?
I was just saying that I think his running, like his actual running ability, like you said, is probably his weakest spot, and it could be a legitimate concern because there is a chance they could bring in a guy, or maybe Justin Jackson or Josh Kelly ends up getting more carries than people expect. Mm-hmm. But Eckler has just as high of a ceiling as any other of these guys that we're talking about because of his ability to catch the ball and run the ball. Like he's the only guy in the league that could do what McCaffrey does in terms of like. He could get 200 something plus carries and over 100 targets and potentially 100 catches. Like it is legitimately possible for him to do that.
I mean, I think the most ugly part about this too is like when you look at his efficiency metrics just on the ground, he's number 27 in yards created. He was number 20 in evaded tackles in the NFL, number 25 in juke rate, number 16 in big hits. He averaged 6 defenders in the box, which is number 57 in the league. He faced a stacked front only 9.8% of the time. And when he did go up against a stacked front, it was 1.2 yards per carry. I mean, these metrics don't lend to good things for Austin Eckler, considering Phillip Rivers is not there. And I don't think defenses are going to hold Tyrod Taylor accountable. They're going to hold their best playmaker accountable, which is, I would say, Austin Eckler at this point. I mean, you could argue Keenan Allen is probably their best playmaker, but at this point, for me, like, I think defenses are looking at Austin Eckler as that main guy. So I think it's a little bit more difficult for him to have success on the ground, more specifically this year. But like you said, the upside is definitely there for Austin Eckler. We're not saying don't draft him. Like, I certainly like him far better than Aaron Jones. That's for sure. Me too. But I think there's a lot of risk tied into Austin Eckler in terms of efficiency. Right. We don't even know what the Chargers are going to look like.
Yeah. One more concern that I'll quickly say that you kind of brought up was that Phillip Rivers is not there anymore. And we know how much he loves targeting running backs. So is Tyrod Taylor going to target Austin Eckler over 100 times? I mean, we think so, but we don't know.
Right. Yeah.
I like the player still.
I do like the player. Anyway, I think as a final note, I think there's a reason why, not just because Melvin Gordon was there, but I think there's a reason why Austin Eckler was not utilized in that way more sooner, and I think that people are not really taking that into account. He's a good running back, but he's not a pure rusher. You know what I mean? He doesn't have the same kind of capabilities rushing the football as like a Christian McCaffrey. He may have I would say he's on par with McCaffrey's receiving chops.
Yep, he is.
But his rushing, he just does not have that element. And maybe that changes this year. Maybe he put the work in. I mean, he certainly looks a lot bigger according to his Instagram posts.
True.
If you saw that picture, but let's talk about our number 4 guy, Kenyon Drake. I think for me, Kenyon Drake, I put him over Austin Eckler. He doesn't have the same receiving upside, but I think he's a better rusher than Austin Eckler. And I think that, though I've talked about this before, everyone has been talking about how Kenyon Drake and the people who think he's going to be a bust think he's going to be in some form of an RBBC. RBBCs are reserved for football teams that move the ball relatively slowly. You know what I mean? Teams that run the ball a lot. Seattle, right?
True.
Baltimore, right? They like to use their running backs, all of them, pretty frequently. So for Kenyon Drake, the big thing is they're in a Cliff Kingsbury offense with the air raid where they're trying to run 70 plays a game. And if they're trying to run 70 plays a game and lead the league in, the amount of plays they run, which is what Cliff Kingsbury said last year that he wanted to do, they're not going to be able to rotate guys in and out at running back. So if Drake is on the field, Drake is going to be on the field. Like, he's going to stay on the field for a majority of the time. So you can take that, Eno Benjamin's going to get receiving work and toss that in a garbage can. And you can take that, Chase Edmonds is going to steal the job stuff and throw that in the garbage can. It's hard to steal the job when you get 3 carries a game. So I think for me, like, Kenyon Drake's going to get all the work. They obviously like him. They traded David Johnson because they liked him so much. Also, they got DeAndre Hopkins.
Oh, yeah, that is, yeah.
Their offense has improved. We talked about that before. I think I would just take him over Austin Eckler because I think Austin Eckler has a chance to lose the rushing job, whereas Kenyon Drake doesn't. Mm-hmm. Kenyon Drake can do 60 catches in a season, which I don't know if he'll do that this year. Don't quote me on that. I think it'll be around 45 to 50, but he can do 60 catches in a season and rush it 250 times and have a really, really successful, season and finish as a top 5 running back because he is a better pure running back than Austin Eckler is. So I feel like the upside's there for me when it comes to, I think Austin Eckler, Kenyon Drake have the same ceiling, but I think there's less uncertainty surrounding Kenyon Drake. Sure. If that makes any sense.
I mean, yeah, no, I agree with you. There is uncertainty with him though, but I don't think it's as high.
It's not the
as
same
Eckler
as Eckler. Right.
There is a chance that he will be a bust. I mean, we've talked about that before, but we also both do really like Kenyon Drake. Obviously we've talked about how when he got traded to Arizona, he was the RB4 in fantasy, averaging about 18 points a game. And people have talked about, well, he can't do it for, we've never seen him do it for a full season. You've heard that argument on Twitter a lot.
Yeah.
We both have, which we both have kind of talked to each other about how it's kind of stupid because you've never seen a lot of players do it for a full season. We've never seen Clyde do it for a full season. Never seen Jonathan Taylor do it for a full season in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And Drake did it for half of a season once he got traded to Arizona. So to me, I think I've seen enough evidence. You've seen enough evidence. Partly because he couldn't do it before was because he was with the worst offense in football with the Miami Dolphins. Now he's in a potentially top 10 offense in the league. And we saw what he was capable of doing last season. I think while he was at Arizona, he had a 72% snap share when he was playing last season, which would put him like 8th among running backs. So if he does that again, it kind of also proves that Cliff Kingsbury isn't going to use the RBBC too, because if he was, I think that number would be lower last season. I know they were battling with some injuries, but there was this time where David Johnson was still healthy, and they were still giving Kenyon Drake the ball, if you remember that.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of out the window too. For me, Kenyon Drake is just he's kind of a risky play, but he's a very good pick in the second round. Yeah. Who has that top 5 upside and is playing in a very good offense.
Yeah, totally agree. I don't want to sit here and talk about Kenyon Drake as a player because we've done that all off season and what he can do.
Right.
So I think it just comes down to upside, and like for me, I think there's a balance between, I always talk about taking calculated risks in fantasy football. And I feel like Kenyon Drake is a calculated risk where Austin Eckler is just a blind risk where you just don't know. Like we know more about the Arizona Cardinals situation than we do about the Chargers situation with Austin Eckler. You know what I mean? Like, is Tyrod going to be good? How are they going to run that entire offense with Tyrod? I sit there and watch Hard Knocks and try to figure it out with Los Angeles, but no idea.
I don't know if Eckler's necessarily a blind risk, but he's more of a blind risk.
He's more of a blind risk, right? Yeah. So, like for me, I think a little bit more with Kenyon Drake than you do with, like, sample size with Kenyon Drake. He was a top 4 running back, over 6, 7, 8 games? Austin Eckler was a top 3 running back over the course of 4 games.
4, right.
So the sample size was small, and he started off the season good, but there's also 3 more quarters of the season than he had to play in order to stay successful. So it's like you saw it more with Kenyon Drake. I think you can trust Kenyon Drake slightly more than you can Austin Eckler. That is not me saying that Austin Eckler can't be better than Kenyon Drake this year. That's for certain within the realm of possibilities. Don't come trolling me if and when that happens with Austin Eckler, but I just feel like the safest play here is Kenyon Drake, especially in the second round when you want to try to get a guy who you think has upside and a breakout potential, but also provides a good floor. I think that the basement could fall out for Eckler, and he could provide a top 5 season, but he also could be a low end RB2. So not that I think he will. I'm just giving you the realm of outcomes. Number 3 is this guy actually is, I was a little surprised to look at the ADP and see him in the in the second round, because he's been in a lot of industry mocks. He goes in the first round.
Top 10 even. And
top 10 even. So I think, for this discussion, I think a lot of leagues are probably drafting him outside of that top 10, top 12. It's usually like if we're taking Clyde, it's at pick 13. So I'll just assume that he's a second round running back for the sake of argument, and I'll have him. I personally would put him ahead of Joe Mixon. But for you,
okay,
I won't do that. So I was reading a message from our group chat, and one of our friends in our home league said Buck's gonna get Fournette. Not a deal done, but they are serious suitors. I want to know what these sources are before I start freaking out about Fournette. I was in love with Rojo this morning, so you know how hard it is for me during the offseason after we draft not to see a highlight from camp and run out and freaking trade for somebody. I saw a Dobbins clip from a week ago, and he made a ridiculous catch, and I was like, I need this guy on my team. I ran out. I'm freaking offering anything to get Dobbins. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? So anyway, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is number 3 on this list. I think if he's the number 1 guy on this team, which he will be, and I don't think Fournette's going to sign with the Chiefs. I feel like every time we have a discussion about any of these players, it's like, does Fournette sign with this team?
Yeah.
Because Austin Eckler is one of those guys that could Like, I think Fournette fits the Melvin Gordon role in Los Angeles very well.
Oh yeah, he would. That would be a great fit.
Like you mentioned the Chargers on our last show, I think that would be a perfect fit. But anyway, Clyde, assuming Clyde is the workhorse, he's in an offense. We've talked about all the metrics. We talked about all the statistics. You can go watch our other shows on our top 10 running backs and all that different stuff. And we talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. All of that's on the table. I think the biggest thing for me, we talk about floor, ceiling, and all that stuff. I think he has a very high ceiling, especially in that Chiefs offense. He is in the best offense among all of these offenses. Like you talk about the Raiders, just listing off the offenses that we have on this list, the Raiders, the Bengals, the Cardinals, the Chargers, the Packers. I feel like, obviously by far and away, the best offense on this list is the Kansas City Chiefs. And when you have a starting running back from the best offense in the league and a running back that they drafted in the first round that they believe in, like, I believe this guy has Kareem Hunt upside. Like Kareem Hunt year one, where he's a top 3, top 4 running back. Like, he has that kind of upside.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think his floor is like number 9. So it's like the realm of outcomes is really small for him, which is why I would take him in the top 3 in the second round. Like, I might even take him, like, if Josh Jacobs is on the board at the beginning of the second round, then I take Josh Jacobs. But for me, like I said, if Josh Jacobs is gone and he went in the first round and it's the second round and Clyde's there, I'm taking Clyde as my favorite second round running back at this point.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you can make the debate that he's higher on this list too. Right. I just think the only reason that I put him third on this list is just because he's never done it before and he's still a rookie. And I don't know, we've never seen how the Chiefs are going to use him either. Like, yeah, I'm just a little nervous about that. But other than that, dude, like, I mean, we've talked about Clyde I feel like every show. We're very big Clyde truthers. I love him.
Huge Clyde truthers. Don't ruin him, Fournette. Don't ruin him.
He's, like you said, everything you said, best offense in the league, handpicked by the coaching quarterback. Every review so far out of camp has been nothing but good. It's similar to like a Jonathan Taylor. I mean, ESPN had an article, I think this morning, saying like why Clyde Edwards-Helaire is worth the hype. And it was saying how everybody in camp is saying how good of a player he is, how hard of a worker he is. Mahomes is saying all this stuff about him. It's nothing but good. He's going to get, I mean, what we're expecting him to get at least is a season where he gets 200, like 30 carries ish, like 60 60 targets with like 40, 45, 50 receptions.
If he gets 60 receptions,
what'd you say?
I know you stuttered on that 60 receptions, but
60 targets.
Just say it.
Sorry.
Just say
targets.
It. Just say 60 receptions.
If he gets 60 receptions,
just say it.
It's over. It's over.
It's over. If he gets 60 receptions, it's freaking over. Top 3.
I've talked about this point before too, and like the Chiefs had, I believe, 16 rushing touchdowns last year. Like they run the ball more than you would expect on the goal line too. I mean, they are the best offense in the league, so they're going to score a lot of touchdowns anyway. So there's a legitimate chance Clyde could get like 12 rushing touchdowns and like 2 or 3 receiving touchdowns, which brings him to like 14, 15 total touchdowns.
That's crazy.
With lots of catches and lots of carries, and it's the sky's the limit.
Yeah. I'm very excited about Clyde. To give you an update on that Leonard Fournette situation, Albert Breer, who is tied into, used to be a New England reporter, probably knows Tom Brady well, so he's probably tied into situations in Tampa now, considering Tom Brady plays for the Tampa Buccaneers. He says that the Buccaneers have emerged as a serious suitor for Leonard Fournette. It's not done, but there's serious interest there, so another weapon for Tom Brady may be on its way. We will keep you updated with anything that we know.
That's very interesting. I like that more fantasy-wise than the Patriots. Would you expect LaShawn McCoy to then probably get cut or not get cut? Just not
McCoy would probably get cut or not used in general.
It'd be
they can't keep 4 running backs.
They might redshirt Keyshawn Vaughn his first year, honestly.
Yeah, that's probably what ended up happening.
If they bring in Fournette.
If they bring in Fournette, yeah. Anyway, number 2 on our list after Clyde Edwards-Helaire is Joe Mixon. You begged for this, so I gave it to you. I have had some concerns about Joe Mixon. I think he does have top 5 upside, but I'm very concerned about the offense in Cincinnati being anywhere close to good. I think they're going to be better than they were last year. I think Mixon's going to be better than he was last year, and I think he'll probably finish at 8 or 9. But for me, I think there's concern more specifically that what if Mixon just turns out to be the running back in the first half of the season that we saw that was averaging 3.6 yards per carry and was just trash? Like if that happens, that scares the living crap out of me. And like, I don't like him as a first round pick. As a second round pick, early second round pick, I'm all for it. But I don't want to use my first round pick on a guy that has a very wide range of outcomes, in my opinion. I do think Joe Mixon's going to break out this year. I do think that he's going to be very good. I think that he has a high ceiling and all good things, which is why I would draft him in the second round, which is why he's number 2 on this list or number 3 on mine. But I do think that there is some concern surrounding Joe Mixon at this point. And I think that people were just blindly taking him in the first round, expecting him to break out. Probably need to do slightly more research.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I get your points. For me, Joe Mixon, like what he was in the first half of the year is not what he was.
Right.
I believe, if you remember correctly, didn't he have an ankle sprain that he was battling in the beginning of the season last year? I believe he had an ankle sprain that he was battling, and as well as the offensive line was probably the worst in the league by far.
Yeah.
And then they got a little bit better. They went from like 32nd to 30th.
Yeah.
And just that slight difference helped Joe Mixon a lot. But the offense was so putrid last year. I mean, this year it's going to be much better. Joanna Williams, who they drafted 11th overall last season at the tackle position. I think he plays left and right tackle. He didn't play a game last year. He tore his ACL in the preseason.
Yeah.
So they're bringing him in. I believe they signed an interior offensive lineman as well. So they brought in 2 guys to really help that offensive line. So that's going to – I'm not saying the offensive line is going to be good.
Yeah.
Because I still think they got a lot of work to do, but it'll be better than what it was last year. A.J. Green's coming back. So that offense as a whole, they drafted T. Higgins. Joe Burrow's coming in there. I think the offense has upside, a lot of upside. And year one, they might not be great year one, but I think they'll be much better than what it was last season. And even if it was as bad as it was last year, Mixon finishes the RB13.
Yeah,
so
right.
I think that's a floor for him with a ceiling.
No, I would agree.
Offense, because he is a workhorse. He's a true
for sure.
workhorse.
I can't remember. Somebody said, I was trying to figure out Joe Mixon a couple months ago, and somebody referenced that. I was like, why was Joe Mixon so bad in the first half of the season? Obviously, I broke down opportunity and how he didn't get as much opportunity, but taking opportunity out of it and talking about efficiency, he was just trash. He was absolute garbage in the first half of the season. It was bad. And in the second half, he got a lot better. So somebody referenced an ankle injury that he had that he was dealing with in the first half of the season, and then after the bye week, it might have gotten better with, an absence for 2 weeks. But for me, it's like they systematically changed their entire kind of strategy with Joe Mixon after the bye week. And it worked. And the offense actually moved the ball a little bit better. So I obviously, I think they're going to do that this year. I think they're going to continue with that, but there's always the chance that Joe Mixon does what he did last year. Like I said, I'm targeting him in dynasty leagues. I'm targeting him in drafts. Like, I don't think he's going to be bad, and I really do believe in him, but I think there is risk attached to the name, and I think it's not in a good offense. And last year, I don't like drafting guys in bad offenses. I hate it. Hate it so much. We talked about it before the show.
That's fair. And they're not going to be a good team either. So there's concerns that maybe they'll be behind in games a lot and be forced to throw it. But yeah, so Mixon did have an ankle sprain at the beginning of last season that he battled through the first few weeks of the season. So you could say that was an issue for him. Yeah. But one more good thing I think for Mixon is he had 278 carries last year. Zach Taylor comes from a coaching staff with Sean McVay. And I think the Shanahan system where it's just ground and pound. McVay had Todd Gurley for those years. So I think he wants to use Joe Mixon like a lot, like a true workhorse. So I think he's going to get to work. And I think the offense is improved enough where he's going to make a significant, maybe not significant, but he'll jump up from like RB13 to like RB7, RB8 in that range.
Okay. The final guy we have on this list, number 1, Joshua Jacobs. For me, I think it's all about upside. I looked at his numbers a couple weeks ago, and I was starting to get a little bit sweaty and fell in love with him because he was pacing at 281 opportunities on the ground. And he was very good. Like, I think it was 280 opportunities with 1,400 rushing yards. He is on par, maybe a little bit less, but somewhere around Nick Chubb in terms of talent rushing the football. Sure. He's very good at rushing the football. Leonard Fournette, over the course of his entire career, has had 72 broken tackles or something like that. Josh Jacobs had 69 all of last year. So he's a very good running back. His one problem has been pass catching, and it's not really been a problem for him. It's just that they did not get him involved in that area. John Gruden has said that they are going to try to get him involved passing the football this year, or passing the ball to him this year, and that he's going to get more catches. If he gets around 40 catches this year and adds 300 to 400 more yards on top of that, and then he gets 12 touchdowns, I mean, the guy is a top 5 running back easily. So I think for me, Josh Jacobs, he already has he has a Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb floor with a pass catching ceiling, that puts him in the top 5. And I think that in terms of, rushing, we know what we're getting from Josh Jacobs, and you're really not taking that big a risk in the early part of the second round, drafting a guy that is going to finish in the top 10 and may very well catch 40 passes next year and absolutely freaking rip souls out in terms of breaking out. So I think he's going to be very good. I think he is the safest breakout running back. He's safer than Miles Sanders.
100%. He's
safer than Clyde. He's safer than any running back we've talked about on this show today. And I think that he has the high. I'm surprised that more people are not talking about Josh Jacobs as a breakout this year, because he legitimately is. He's gone under. He for some reason has gone under the radar.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why, because he is, like you said, he absolutely is the safest player, and he's still got a high ceiling because
safe players aren't the sexy ones though.
Right, exactly. But he does have a high ceiling still because he only had 20 catches last year, and he only played in 13 games, and he had 242 rushes. If he gets, like you said, the 40 catches, 45 catches, didn't he say he wanted to catch 60 balls? I mean, right. I don't think that's going to happen, but it just shows that
if he
wants
did,
to
though,
improve his receiving game. Oh, if he did, yeah.
It's over.
RB2, RB3 for sure.
RB1, move over, Christian.
I don't know about it.
I'm kidding.
But yeah, I mean, what's underrated with him too is the offensive line with now the Vegas Raiders. It's weird to say that, but the Las Vegas Raiders is pretty good. They Pro Football Focus has them ranked as the 11th offensive line going into the 2020 season. So it's pretty solid, and they're known for having a very good interior offensive line as well, which is going to help Jacobs in the running game. And he was fantastic last year.
Right.
Anyway, before getting injured, he only had 7 total touchdowns too. That number could go up very easily with a potentially better offense, because last year, if you remember, the Raiders, they were okay, but they had a lot of injuries, especially on offense. This year, other than Tyrell Williams, they added Henry Ruggs, Brian Edwards, Hunter Renfrow, who I think tore his ACL early in the season last year, or midway through the season, is back healthy again. So that offense should be at least decent, maybe a little bit better than it was last season. All good things for Josh Jacobs. I mean, there really is not a con when you're talking about pros and cons with Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, right.
The only thing is maybe they have a lot of running backs on the roster, so there's a chance they might use one of the guys a little more than you'd hope, but I don't expect that to happen at all. They've talked about using Josh Jacobs this year as a 3-down back.
Obviously.
Yeah, go ahead.
I said obviously.
Oh, sorry. It's the phone connection, bro. It's that Zoom connection.
It's all right. I forget.
But yeah, no, I mean, Jacobs, like you said, he's got a really high floor, the highest floor of any of these guys that we've talked about, and he's still got the upside. So he if you're in the second round and he's on the board, you should take him.
Agreed. That'll do it for our second round running back rankings. I haven't heard anything on Leonard Fournette.
He's going to sign right
GM over. Tom Brady. He's trying his darndest.
Yep.
Dang, dude, that would be crazy. We're going to have to talk about this on Monday. But thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Hopefully we have Leonard Fournette news on Monday. We have a mock draft, final show for the actual off season, I guess. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram. Buy the draft guide. Check out our website. Talk to you Tuesday, friends.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.